I taught art because there was freedom and there wasn't a curriculum. I suppose there were books on people who wrote books on art curriculums, but the art teacher in a high school was probably the only one who was totally free. I was free to do whatever the hell I wanted, and most of the time it was around my own fascinations with phenomena and with things. That's why I had such a hell of a time teaching art in a high school. I went from a junior high school where I started to a high school, and I had this fantastic principal named Frank Ciccarell. He was a bit of a mafioso, and a mixture of that and Julius Caesar, you know. He actually looked like Julius Caesar, and I don't know how it happened, but sometimes kids would actually, at the end of an assembly, stand up and like they were saluting Hitler with their arm out straight. They'd look at him and they'd say, "Hail Caesar, Hail Caesar," and they'd give him 3 Hail Caesars. I went to a predominantly black and Spanish high school in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and I came back into that same high school and was assigned a role as a teacher. It was my second post, actually, in Elizabeth, and I was a fantastic art teacher. I had a fantastic time. And I got interested in photography. I was really buying cameras, and of course anything I did, and this is something I think that most teachers can't do, anything I did, I just brought the students along with me. So if at one point I got really into film animation, drawing, and stop frame animation, and I had all the kids doing it, and got some fantastic 3 minutes. You know what? You know how much 3 minutes is? It takes 24 pictures for 1 second. This all works through the persistence of vision. When you see something and then it's replaced within the 24th of a second, the mind sees it as almost smooth movement. And stop frame animation is fantastic, especially with drawings. And there's lots of other ways you can do it. One fun, great way to do it is to build little people out of clay and move them around. When I showed it to the kids and I put music to it, it absolutely flipped them out. So everything that I was tripping on, and I mean tripping, I would bring the kids along with me. I did really well. You know, I started photography and filmmaking, and then we went to narrative filmmaking, where the kids make up stories. Now, this is an interesting school. Thomas Jefferson High School was the last school in America to be segregated by sex. The girls went to one high school and the boys went to the other. And I think in the late 40s, a lot of girls got pregnant. So the marvelous, amazing, ingenious city council decided to put the boys in one school and the girls in the other. Did that stop pregnancy? No. The pregnancy among teenagers grew and got greater and bigger. So it actually did nothing. So along come the 50s and early 60s, and a women's lib group decided to sue the Board of Education and make a co-ed school. But Thomas Jefferson held out to the last minute. I graduated when it was still an all-boys school, and it was about a third black and third Spanish, and then there were some Jews and Polacks and some Russians, and then the Cuban population started to grow. For some reason, New Jersey became a little Cuba in America. Cubans integrated first to Florida, and then they moved up north. And Elizabeth had a huge Cuban population, as it has today. It's mostly Spanish today, Elizabeth, New Jersey. I know. I went back from my insulated job on the other side of the world in Bangkok, and I came back to a city hall where all the signs are in Spanish. So it's very interesting. There's bodegas everywhere. It looks like a little piece of Cuba right now. And Haitian, and now it's Haitian too. So anyhow, what I'm really trying to get at in this story is that my principal loved me. His name was Frank Ciccarell, and we all called him Little Caesar. And when that guy died, 5,000 kids and administrators and sports people came to his funeral. He was very heavy into football and sports, and he was the head of a million different associations. You know, he was the president of this and the president of that. Frank Ciccarell he taught till he was 80 in Elizabeth. I think nobody ever got to that age and still stayed at the Board of Education in New Jersey. During assemblies, if the kids got rowdy, and this is all boys now, black and Spanish and white kids, he would just get on the stage and look at the audience and say, "Shut the fuck up." That's a principle. That's a principle. The principles today are like cheesecake, like marshmallows compared to Frank Ciccarell. I love this man. He was so direct, and he loved me. He loved my creativity. He loved what I was doing with my art room. And he gave me so many letters of recommendation, which are in my cafe. If you look in the tables, you'll see recommendations by Frank C. Ciccarell in my tables. And you could get no better recommendation than when that guy recommended you, people knew you were good. And in fact, I think it was 1974, he must have done something in the New Jersey legislature because, well, I have it here. I have proof of everything. I've got this certificate, which was Outstanding Secondary Educator of America, as I was one of two people in my state. Can you see that? To get this certificate for Jerry Bernard Hochberg. And I want to tell you that for an art teacher to get Outstanding Secondary Educator of America, it ain't easy, but I wasn't worried about it. I was having fun. And I want to tell all you new teachers out there, that's the way to start a career. Have fun. And there's a song by Tony Bennett, and it says, "Are you having any fun?" And I want to tell you something. I wouldn't have stayed in this profession for 60 years if I wasn't having fun. I'm having more fun than all these other people who are trying to be administrators and guidance counselors. And I'm not saying they don't service the kids. They do a great job. But I'm the only person that was not only servicing the kids, but I was having a great time. And it was like a secret. It was a secret that I couldn't tell anybody. I couldn't tell anybody that I was having a really wonderful time, and I should be paying them for the honor of being with all these children and shaping their lives. And it was really fantastic. So let me tell you how this whole story goes. Do you all know about the political machine? Did you ever hear about that? Something called the political machine. Well, politics was always a machine to me. I really didn't know about the Electoral College and why a guy became president and how he even started. But I found out a lot about this. Not about the election system and electorates and how people become president and congressmen and senators. I had no idea how that all works. And of course, in school, I never paid attention to that kind of stuff. I was interested in animation, in film animation. I was interested in photography. I was interested in welding and sculpture. And of course, I had the only profession in the world, in school, where I could just take the kids with me, whatever I liked to do. So whatever passion I had, whatever fascinated me, I'd bring all these kids along with me. And I had so much fun telling them how to do it. So that's my art teaching career pretty much. And I was lucky when I came to Bangkok. I was an art teacher at ISB, but I could start going in any direction I wanted. And the school had money. I mean, public school does not have a budget for art. Most of the times I was jumping fences to get junk to bring into my classroom for kids to put together. I'd go to a plastics factory, and at night, like, I forget you call those guys dressed in black, I would jump over the fence in an industrial complex and steal out of their dumpsters all this shit that I would bring back to school and make sculpture out of, and that's how I was supplied. We had no budget. The art budget was out of a Hamilton or Hampton catalog, and you couldn't order that much. You had a certain amount to spend, and it was always, it would never service the kids that you had. I had so many kids, okay, and most of my kids are impoverished, and they come to school in dreadful clothes. I had a lot of Haitian kids that had almost no money at all, and they had black blue skin, and they were so beautiful. And Thomas Jefferson High School is an amalgam of kids from all over the world. It's sometimes more than an international school, okay? So I met the superintendent, and one of the first things I did with kids, one of the few things I did with kids, because I was spending my own money, my salary, like water, and what I did is I bought 7 carousel projectors. Do you remember them? Do you know what a carousel projector was? It used to project slides. And I used to take slides on a theme and then load 6 projectors up or 4 projectors up. And I found this system from a company that's long gone that was fantastic. One of the biggest outfitters in New York for photography is B&H. It's still there. It's run by Hasidim Jews. There was another company, not run by Hasidim, which was called Spiritome, and it was run by this little strange man, and he had every gadget in the world in this photography store. He had lenses that had mirrors in them, so when you're trying to take a picture of somebody, it looks like you're taking a picture of somebody, but actually the mirror is in the lens, and it's taking a picture from the side of the camera, so you could get great candid shots without people looking at you. They didn't even know you were taking their picture. And it was a lens that you screwed on your 35 millimeter camera, and it would take pictures to the side and not the front. And this guy, his whole store was full of photography gadgets. So from there we went into filmmaking, and I started making narrative movies with kids as the actors and the planners and the producers, and they'd write the stories, and most of it was all about gangs, and it was all about criminality. I mean, basically, they love crime films, and all the movies we made in town were gangster movies. We were really famous in making great gangster movies, and my principal thought it was cool. And since most of the guys I graduated with were policemen in Elizabeth, I go down the headquarters, which is just behind the school, because Elizabeth was a crime-ridden town. On a crime density map, most of Elizabeth, or a lot of it, was black. It wasn't gray. They had different grays for how much crime is in each area. And I saw that crime density map at the police station. So I could go to these guys, and I met the chief, and I asked them, could I do police chase scenes in the city? And I did. And this is not a story I want to get into, because the story that I'm trying to get to is how I was almost killed. Multi-projection slideshows. And I found out about this through Spiritome, this company I told you that's sold in New York. Spiritome is gone, long gone. And there was a Mr. Spiritome. But anyhow, you can look it up on Google. But anyhow, they had these computers, really. They were little boxes that could control 6 slide projectors. And they would work with a cassette tape. And when you wanted to trigger a slide from any one of the 6 projectors, you'd push a button and it would make an audible tone. It would actually record an audible tone on a cassette tape. And with that, you could have music, stereo music, and put that through a big amplifier. So I started doing slideshows, and the first slideshow that I did was on the city of Elizabeth. And I got a lot of the data of the history of the city from the library about the city and how it started and what kind of a demographic breakup it had and all. And I put that into about 1,000 slides, maybe more. You know what slides are called? Chromes. These are little 2x2 chromes, and in carousel projectors. And the projectors would be triggered by the tape. So you could have a cassette player. I don't know if any of you are even old enough to remember cassette recording. I'm joking. I know you are. But on the tape, I'd push one of these 6 buttons, and it would trigger the slide. And it was done with transition. So whatever slide was on the screen would fade into the next slide. So you had to organize this. Now, each tray held 140 slides. And there was even a 240 slide tray that you could buy for a carousel projector. Now, these were expensive ones because I got them through the school, and again on another grant that I got, and I got 6 ectographic. That was the best of the Kodak line. You could get a regular carousel for home, but if you bought an ectographic, that was a heavy-duty one. And they had zoom lenses, and you would match all the images, and you would put 3 screens together, 3 big movie screens, or even 4 or 5 movie screens together, so in a big half of a circle. So it was like Cinerama. This was my kind of Cinerama, and I got really good at doing multi-projection slideshows. And of course, I got the kids into it. We'd write, or we'd see a book on astronomy or something, and I taught them how to do narration in a microphone. Not that I'm any good at it. And they would do it. They would narrate, and one kid would do the cueing. But every time you pushed a button, it would put a tone, and there were 6 different tones. And depending on the tone, the reader would read the tone and trip that carousel. So one image would fade away and the new image would replace it. And this is going on 3 screens, and I had 6 projectors. I had one of the biggest units you could buy. I had it all to myself because nobody knew how to use it. So it was in my art room all the time. And we were doing multi-projection slides. That was in the World's Fair. Actually, there were multi-projection slideshows with 180 projectors. I mean, this was something at the time. I don't know if that stuff is still around. I don't even think slide projectors are still around. But anyhow, I had 6. And that was from movies. I went to multimedia, multi-projection slideshows with children. Well, the superintendent was invited to my high school. He came. He saw a 5-screen, 6-projector slideshow that I set up in the auditorium, and he went bonkers. And when Italians go bonkers, it's amazing. I mean, he wanted to make me president of the United States. He said, "How did you do this? This is amazing." And then I talked to him afterwards, and I showed him the whole system and how it works and how it's triggered. And he was just flabbergasted. He was so excited about it. And he said, "I want you to do one on the Elizabeth schools." And he took me out of teaching. And he made a title for me. He called me Arts Career Specialist. And he put me under the assistant superintendent, who was this fantastic, light-skinned black lady that I mean, she's just the most amazing woman for organizing, and she had so much finesse with people. She was so perfect as a person. And we gelled. Bernice Davis, She died of brain cancer. I miss her like crazy. She was a smoker, and unfortunately, I knew her whole family, her mother, her daughter Dee Dee, and her son Jimmy, and her ex-husband Hilton. I knew all of them, and we were friends. And she put two other people with me. She put this wonderful librarian named Susan Bantang, who turned out to be my sister today. She is my official sister. And we worked together for a number of years. Now, I asked Susan about it. I said, how many years did we work together? She said about 5. It felt like we worked together forever. And we had another guy with us, Art Fredman, who had a beautiful wife named Judy, who was so sweet, and a boy named Dougie. Well, so I had Susan and Art and me, and we were a team under the Assistant Superintendent of Schools, Bernice Davis. And what Susan was chiefly responsible for was the board newspaper that would come out for 33 schools. And I was graphics and photography, and Art Fredman, he was sort of a writer. He wrote. He was a publicist kind of writer. But Susan did most of the writing, and I did the photography, and Susan did the desktop publishing after I taught her this program, Ready, Set, Go. I don't think it's around anymore. It's a desktop publishing program, and we published The Focus, which was the name of the board newspaper, okay? Now, I'm getting you too much detail, and I'm way the hell off the subject, okay? So I came through the superintendent of school, I came under the mayor's attention. And this is a mayor who was elected to office 24 years in a row. He was an Irishman, and he was another tough guy. Yeah, he could have been an Irishman in Boston. It would have worked. And he was such a great guy. Everybody loved him, and everybody called him mayor, And I got to know him really well because my superintendent kept touting me, you want fireworks? I got Jerry Hochberg working for me. And he would send me over to the mayor's office, and they had a relationship. All these heads of the police department, the mayor's office, the Board of Education, the superintendent, they all hung out together and knew each other really well. It was, in a sense, a city mafia, It was a political machine, actually. If anybody would give it a credit for being a political machine, I will. Okay, so I got called by my superintendent while I was working on work for Bernice Davis, the assistant superintendent. He called me up and he said, Jerry, I've got a project for you. Come to my office. Well, the head of 33 schools summoned me to his office. Now, don't forget, I'm only 24 years old now, 25 years old. And I went to his office and he said, sit down. You got to help me out. The mayor called me. I told you they did favors for each other. And he said, I'm going to give you to the mayor of the city. I want you to go there and talk to the mayor. This is only a preliminary meeting. And I said, Rocco, what is this about? And he says, I can't really tell you. I can't tell you unless the mayor approves it. So you go to the mayor now, okay? Take your car. I had this little Nash Rambler that my mother gave me. My mommy gave me a Nash Rambler. I took that car and I drove over to City Hall and parked in the City Hall lot. And I walked in, and the mayor had this really tough Irish secretary named Sally. And she knew me, but I didn't know her. I don't know how she knew me. She said, Jerry, come in, sit down. The mayor will be with you in just a minute. And I sat there in his office in these leather chairs, with paintings of the old City Hall and old buildings and the churches in Elizabeth in his office. Very nice rug office, beautiful, comfortable. And I sat down in that office. I'm just seeing. I think, I'm recording, so I'm okay. So I sat down, and then Mayor Dunn came to the door, and he said, Jerry, come on in. And I would come in. And there were blinds behind him, these thin blinds, and the sun was just piping through, hitting me in the eyes. And he says, is the sun bothering you? and I could hardly see the guy. You know, he's against these blinds with the afternoon, 12 o'clock sun coming through these little blinds, and it was blinding me. And there were Venetian blind shadows all over the whole room. And he went over and he adjusted. He says, here. Is that better? And I said, yeah, it's better. It's better. And he says, look, you're going to do a favor for me. I know you're the photographer, and you used to teach it, right? And I said, yeah, I used to teach it at Jefferson High School. And he says, yeah, I love that guy Ciccarelli. And I said, I love him too. He's my buddy. And he said, look, I'm telling you that Reagan's coming to town. Reagan Bush. He's going to be president of the United States. Maybe, I don't know. But he's coming to New Jersey, and his first stop is in Elizabeth. And he's coming into Newark Airport. Air Force One is coming into Newark Airport. I didn't know what Air Force One was. I didn't know it was a plane. I tell you, I was such a creepy artist. And I didn't know anything about politics or political machinery or how anybody ever gets elected. I never heard of an electoral college. I don't know what that is. I still don't know what it is. I never paid attention to it. And I didn't like Reagan. I didn't say a movie actor becoming president of the United States. Well, today, look who we got as president of the United States. So it's no surprise, right? So Reagan came to Elizabeth, New Jersey. And when he came in, the mayor said, the Secret Service is going to have to check you out. And did I hear him right? I said, the Secret Service? He said, yes. You got a home phone? And I said, yeah, but it's unlisted. He said, that's all right. Don't worry about that. So I heard that the Secret Service was going to check me out. He said, there's only going to be 3 photographers, and you're mine, and you're doing this for me and the Elizabeth Daily Journal. That was a newspaper. And we're going to publish your prints, and I need them the next day, so you got to get them to me the next day. Well, how the hell am I going to develop black and white photographs for the newspaper overnight when there might be hundreds of photographs involved? I was using Tri-X film in those days. So I had to figure that out, and again, Spiritone helped me, and I'll tell you what I found at Spiritone. Okay, so the mayor explained the job that Reagan was going to be coming in a limousine, which was a lie, by the way, and there would be lots of security. Secret Service would be there, and there would be on all the roofs of the city buildings, including the high school, there would be sharpshooters. These guys laying down with guns trained on the crowd. And they built a special ramp coming off the stairs of City Hall. City Hall had these beautiful stairs leading up to it. It was a very high building. And they were going to build this, I don't know what you would call it, but it was his stand where he would make a speech to the Elizabeth citizens, right? And the grunts of the city. That's what I like to call them. I like to call them the grunts of the city. So anyhow, Reagan was going to come into town in a limousine, several limousines, with security force, and he was going to make his speech because he was on the way to being president of the United States. So this gentleman, me, this little kid at 24, I'll keep throwing my picture in there so you can see what I look like at that time. This was 1980 probably. You know, I don't think I think the picture's a little younger than the way I actually looked at that time. And I was going to be with the President of the United States or the incumbent President of the United States for one whole day. And not to do anything else that day. I was told by the mayor, you don't make any plans for that day. And I want you to go to the camera store. And the camera store guy was my friend. It was Dan, who lived to be 93 years old. And I knew him for 60 years. Go pick up the film and charge it to City Hall. So I bought 40 rolls of film. I bought Tri-X, which is 400 speed ASA, and I bought Chrome. I bought a slide film to make colored pictures in those days, right? I bought direct slide film, Kodachrome. I think I bought about 10 rolls of Kodachrome and 40 rolls of Tri-X. I needed an extra camera bag just to carry the film, right? The mayor said, get whatever you need. I said, but what, I need batteries? He said, batteries? Buy all the batteries you want. So I bought like 200 AA batteries for my flash, and I had two cameras. I had a Nikon Photomic and a Nicomat. I had two cameras, and I had about 6 lenses. I was crazy about photography equipment. And I even went out and bought myself a special camera bag for all this shit to bring it to this thing, right? So they told the city that Reagan was going to take this path in from Newark to Elizabeth, New Jersey, and they put police stanchions up along his path. So you had these look like horses. You had these police things that said police on them, and they put it up. They even had the maid that said Elizabeth and police department, and they lined them up down the main streets from Newark Airport to Elizabeth, New Jersey. Okay, now that was a complete lie, was completely false. Okay, so the day that I went to do this, I was told to come in at around 9 o'clock in the morning. Earlier would be better, he said. But you come to my office and you'll sit here, and there's going to be the White House photographer will be there, and National Geographic. There's going to be 3 of you. The 3 photographers, we were all sitting in the office, and the mayor had this front guy named Carmen something. I can't remember his last name, but he was obesely fat, and he was there too. And so I came at 9 o'clock, and I'm sitting in the mayor's outside office. The mayor came out. He was already in his office early in the morning and said, now, you ready, Jerry? Did you get the film? Are you all set? And I said, yeah. And he says, now, look, you're going to have to hand all your equipment over to the Secret Service. They're going to have to look at your cameras, your film, everything. They got to check your whole camera bag, everything, and anything in your pockets, too. So I said, well, when's that going to happen? And he says, I can't tell you. I don't know. But they'll come in and they'll ask you for your camera bag. Just give it to them, and don't worry about anything. So I sat there and I waited, and it was a long wait. Reagan was supposed to come around 10:30 or 11 o'clock. He didn't show up till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And guess what they did? They put 3 limousines coming down that road where all the citizens of the town, the whole citizens of Elizabeth, everybody knew it was in the Elizabeth Daily Journal. Reagan was going to come this way. And they did that purposely, and everybody lined the streets all the way to Newark, New Jersey. And they had 3 presidential cars, bulletproof presidential cars. And guess what they did? They brought them into the town by landing a helicopter on top of City Hall on one of the flat roofs. They brought in a helicopter. Reagan popped out with Secret Service agents, and they lied to all the citizens who were waiting for him, and the 3 cars with black windows went by, and they thought that was Reagan. But that was to fault any assassination attempt. This is the kind of security at that level that you get. It's strategized, okay? Now, I didn't see the helicopter, but I heard it. And just after that, he appeared in that office where I was. And the first thing, before this happened, when I was home, somebody called me. And I have an unlisted number. And it was the Secret Service. And I said to them, he said, hello, this is the Secret Service. And I said, hi. I was a bachelor living in a little house. And I said, how did you get my phone number? And he started laughing. He said, tomorrow we're going to have to check your camera bag and anything you bring. I said, okay, that's okay. And I said, how did you get my number? And he just hung up on me. You don't have any rights as a citizen. If you think you have some rights, God bless you, Today, we're finding out that police departments don't give you any rights, actually. In those days, nobody had any rights. You were living in a country that was controlled by a political machine. So I went to the mayor's office. I'm waiting, and the Secret Service agents come in, and they said, "Is this your camera bag?" I said, "Do you have anything else?" I said, "No." And then the guy reached over, and he clipped onto my pocket. I was wearing a dress shirt. He clipped on this little pin. He said, "Don't lose it. It's important." And I looked at it, and it was the same thing the Red Cross used to give out. If you gave 10 cents or 20 cents to the Red Cross, they give you this little white pin. Some of you are old enough to remember this. And it was flat, and it had a tab with a little rough spot on it. And you would bend it over your pocket, and that meant you contributed to the Red Cross. Well, he gave me a slightly larger one. It was kind of reddish orange. Excuse me. And it had an R on it. It had an R in a circle. There was a special circle and an R. "Don't lose this," he told me. I said, "Oh, I won't lose it. Don't worry about it." And I just kept it clipped on my pocket. He said to me, "Only people that have this pin can be within so many meters of the president." So I said, "Well, what's the plan? Where's the president?" And he says, "He's coming in a few minutes. And you and these two other photographers are going to be able to get your photo opportunity then. And you can also take pictures of him during his speech." And I was shitting in my pants. I had never seen this guy, only on television. And I had that little R pin on. And I had my cameras ready, and I kept checking them and turning them on and off and looking at the battery life, which I should be doing now and looking at the battery life on this camera. So anyhow, I waited, and the door opened, and 3 guys came in with those little Secret Service pins on. This is absolutely the fuck true, what I'm telling you, so believe what I'm saying. And then Reagan walked in, and Reagan looked like he was stamped out in a plastic factory. It didn't look real. He had makeup on. He was coiffed. His hair was coiffed. His hair looked like hair that I see on Saturday Night Live that's made out of plastic. I mean, the wave of his hair, the way his hair was combed. The suit didn't have a crease in it. Not even a crease like real cloth. It looked like he was stamped out in God's president plastic factory. He just didn't look real. He said, "Hello there, gentlemen." He walked in. "Hi, everybody." I said, he asked me for my name. I said, "I'm Jerry Hochberg." And he said, "Hi, nice to meet you." And he knew the White House photographer was there. He says, "You, I know." He pointed at him and said, "You, I know." And then the guy from National Geographic, he didn't know, and he told him his name. And he says, "Well, it's very nice to meet you guys. Are you ready?" And we said, "Yeah, we're all ready." And of course, guess who hogged the best shots of Reagan? The White House photographer and National Geographic. Those guys stepped right in front of me. I had such a hard time. My mayor told me the whole reason I was there to get pictures of his 8-year-old or 7-year-old grandson, Brian, with the president. So I was there for just a personal, selfish reason of my mayor, which is not surprising. So he won a lot of photographs of his grandson with the president. The only problem was the disparity. Reagan was a tall guy, and the little kid was not even a meter tall. So most of the pictures I took were Reagan's ass. I couldn't get the angle, and he was shaking that little kid's hand. And the mayor had him do it several times. And then the mayor took a picture with him. The governor was in the office, and several lawyers, and they took pictures. And the picture that I started this movie with was one of the pictures that I took. And the guy I thought was the governor, he's not. He's a very high-end lawyer. And that woman, she's maybe the councilman. I don't know who she is. And there's Reagan. So that picture that's in the title was taken by me, and I had several other black and white pictures that I made copies of to show that I did this job. I was so proud of it. Well, after he talked, now I had to put up with 2 hours of the mayor's front man, this Carmine, whatever his name was, this fat guy, talking about his Italian tomato garden and the kind of tomatoes that he's getting and the kind of fertilizer he uses. This is what happened before Reagan opened the door and the Secret Service came in to check my equipment. They took my bag away from me, and about 10 minutes after Reagan was there a while, they came back with my camera bag and they gave it back to me. Oh, wow. So how do you get down to the first floor where they built this thing for Reagan to come out, and the whole city was out there already, and the press was out there, and our feeble little newspaper, the Elizabeth Daily Journal, which doesn't exist anymore, they were there and their reporters were there, but I had the best vantage point in the house. And then I saw those guys on top of the high school, those sharpshooters. There were about 4 of them with telescopic sight, big guns, watching this, and they were all over City Hall to protect Reagan. Reagan came out, and the crowd cheered. And one of the things I noticed that I've never known about, they had a whole direct communications booth set up. It wasn't for PA, for Reagan's voice coming out. It was to call security forces if anybody made an attempt on Reagan's life. And I saw secret agents with their dress jackets opened a little bit, and I saw guns that I have never seen in my life. They look like lasers. I mean, they look so high-tech. They had these guns, some of them made out of stainless. And when their jackets opened, I saw their guns, man. And they were not like that. They were like no gun I've ever seen in a movie. Really. I never saw it. And the little broadcasting booth that they had for security, it had little on the top of the booth, it had little satellite antennas, these little special antennas, and they were turning, so that regardless of any cutoff in communication with the phone system, there weren't cell phones in those days, but if anything failed, they had satellite communication. There were these dishes, and they were turning on top of the booth. I've never seen anything like that. And I was behind Reagan. I moved out to get a vantage point from the front, and the Secret Service said that I could stand anywhere around that podium, that construct they had coming from the stairs of City Hall. Well, here's the actual story. Here's the story in a nutshell. I went down before Reagan went down, and with a Secret Service agent well behind me, I walked down the stairs into the rotunda of City Hall, the main part of the City Hall, which is all marble, has this beautiful Art Deco light hanging over it, and it's a circle of stone. And all of a sudden, a guy went for me. Now, this is with my camera bag, which was opened. And he jumped on me and took me down to the floor, and then put a death grip around my throat. This guy choked the shit out of me. He put a death grip around me and locked his hands. I could not breathe. I was starting to pass out. All my camera gear, my lenses, my Nicormat, my Nikon Photomic, went to the floor, and everything broke into pieces. The lens broke off the cameras. I had one camera left that was good in the bag. The other 2 were finished. And this guy is choking shit on me. He puts his body weight on top of me, and he's laying on me. I can't breathe. I'm about to pass out, and then I hear another guy yell, "He's cleared! He's cleared! What are you doing? He's cleared!" That little Reagan badge that I had on, that thing they snapped over my pocket like the Red Cross, it came off and it went into my pocket. And that guy didn't see it, and he jumped me. And he jumped me from behind, choked the shit out of me, pushed me down to the floor so violently that my cameras and everything smashed, and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't talk. I couldn't even talk. And I thought, that's it. I'm dead. And another guy yelled out, he's cleared. He's cleared. There's his badge. And other Secret Service guy said, I'm sorry, are you okay? And the guy got off me. And he said, are you okay? And I couldn't even talk to the guy. I couldn't vocalize. He crushed my windpipe. And they took that. He says, don't lose that pin. And I put the pin back on, squeezed it again over my pocket. And after that, I had one camera to take pictures. Okay? Now, the film in the camera was okay, so all the ones done up in the mayor's office was fine. Okay? And Reagan did his speech, and I photographed him until I used up 40 rolls of Tri-X film, 400 ASA film in those days. Good old Kodak. Now, when the thing was over, and I left, and I went up to the mayor and I said, he asked me, you got everything? And I said, yeah, I've got everything. I said, those guys almost killed me. They choked the shit out of me. He said, I'm sorry, Jerry. You shouldn't have lost that little badge. And I said, he says, I want everything in my office tomorrow. I said, Mayor, I can't. Each roll was 24 exposure, and I used 40 rolls. Jesus Christ, I can't have that to you tomorrow. And he says, you got to have it for me tomorrow. And I said, I got to go to school. And he says, just tell Rocco that I said so. So I called City Hall. I called the Board of Education, but I never got to speak to the superintendent. And I just told him I can't come in today. The mayor wants his film, and he wants it all done by 5 o'clock tomorrow. So I went home. Okay. Now, why is Spirotone important? Because newspapers didn't trade develop pictures. You had an enlarger where you put your negative in that would project it down on the photographic paper, and then you would take it into developer first, and then you go into stop bath. That would stop the development. This is a 3-tray under red light. You remember that from movies or something that you saw? Why do they always have 3 trays? Well, the first one's developer. The second tray is stop bath. It's a chemical to stop the development. And then the third tray is fixer. And that's what fixes the silver crystals and fixes them on the paper and stops, and that's your photograph. Okay? And then after you come out of that fixer, you got to go into a tray where a spigot of water is just constantly changing. That's dropping water into that tray. It's usually in the sink. And your pictures are floating around. And then you hang them up to dry. Okay? Now that's the normal way black and white photography was done for how many 100 years? All right? Developer, sometimes they just use water, but as things went on with Kodak, they developed something they called stop bath to stop the development. Okay? And then you'd go into water. And how many minutes? It depended on a recipe. I was using H1C, but there was the common developer. I got a good memory. The common developer was called Dectol. So they used Dectol. But I used H1C. It was a finer grain developer. And then stop bath, and then fixer. And then the water bath. So I had like 200 to 400 prints floating around in this big slop sink with the water constantly coming in and being let out very slowly. So the water is being exchanged to wash the fixer off the photographs. Now that's the way it's normally done. I didn't do that. I found out that newspapers use a stabilized processor. It's much faster. And I went to New York, and this is part of City Hall paid for this, and I found this out from photographers. I didn't know anything about stabilized processing. And I went and bought this machine. It looks like a laminating machine. And it has a tray of ammonia, this special chemical in it. And all you do after you come out of your enlarger, after you frame your work, you pick up the paper and put it through the stabilizer. and it goes in through the rollers and comes out on the other side, and that's it. It smells like ammonia. It smells like ammonia. And you can wash your prints and hang them up. Now, the difference between tray printed photographs and stabilized machine printed photograph is that they don't last. If you leave them in the sunlight for any amount of time, they start to fade very fast. So they have no life. But proper tray developing photographs are archival. They last forever. I mean, they last for a long time, and unless they're exposed to UV sunlight for a long time. But they're much more stable. So newspapers don't care how stable the photographs are. They keep them in a filing cabinet, and they make a plate and they put them in the newspaper right away. So all newspapers process the film from their stringer photographers. And that's another story I'm going to tell you, because I was a stringer photographer for the Elizabeth Daily Journal. I did that for like a year, and that was another horrible situation. So anyhow, all my photographs are dry. I've got a pile like this, like, look at my hands, of black and white photographs. I shot very little color. Most of it's in black and white. And I made some copies for myself. And when I was going to make this movie, I was going to show you those photographs that I took of Reagan in the office, and that little kid Brian, and Reagan's ass. I was going to show you Reagan's ass, because that was the angle that I had most of the time, was Reagan bending over to shake hands with a 7-year-old boy. And I could not get a shot of the little grandkid that well. I got one or two from the side, but those other photographers, they held their ground. Those other two photographers, they wouldn't let me move, and I could only move within a certain space. And it's not that big of an office, so I was at a disadvantage to these pros. You know, I was just a stupid kid with my camera working for the mayor. Okay. Anyhow, I worked all night, and I made this group of photographs. And the next day, I called Sally, his tough-ass Irish secretary, and I said, Sally, I'm finished. Does the mayor want to see me today? And she said, yes, he does, and he's waiting for you, and you should have called earlier. I said, Sally, I've been working all night and all day on these. I shot 40 rolls of film. So he said, well, he's dying to see them, and he wants you to bring them in right now. And I called her, and then I went to the office, and she said, the minute I went in, she opened up the mayor's door. Mayor, Jerry's here. And I walked in. I said, hi, Mayor. And he shook my hand. Jerry, I've been waiting for you. Where the hell were you all day? And like I was doing nothing, right? I was up all night, no sleep. And I came in, and I said, here they are. And he says, what do I owe you? And I said, how's $300? How's that sound? He says, I'm going to give you $500. $500. And I said, great. He says, let me see the photographs. And he had a big round table, was a meeting table in his office. And those same damn blinds, that sunlight was just coming through those blinds. And I said, can you close the blinds? And he says, oh, I'm sorry. And he went over and pulled and drew the blinds. These are thin blinds, and he drew them closed, and I put the photographs down in a pile, and he just flipped them all out on the table. So he opened up, he looked at all the photographs on the table, and he kept picking them up and putting them down, and he'd shake his head, and he says, he looked at me, and he said, these aren't any good. Where are your good ones? I said, Mayor, that's everything I shot. He says, what am I going to do? Put a picture of Reagan's ass in a frame and put that in my house? I said, I only had one position, and Reagan was bent over shaking hands with Brian. He says, well, why didn't you get it from the side? And I said, the other two photographers wouldn't move, and I didn't. I tried to get around them. And he said, this one's okay. I got one. 1 out of 400, Jerry. You're doing really good. And Christ, I felt like shit, you know. And then he he went through them again, and he kept pushing them all over the table. And he said, "Oh, this one's good." And I said, "Oh, I had a little relief. I had a little relief for a second." And he said, "This one's good. This is pretty good." And then I just waited, and he found 2 more. "I got 4. I got 4 out of 40, Jerry." He says, "Jesus Christ." He says, "What a disappointment. What a disappointment." I said, "Mayor, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry." And he says, "Jerry, this is shit. This is shit. Where don't you have any?" And I said, "Let's look through them. Maybe there's some more." And he found about 3 others that he liked. So he had 7 now that showed Brian. That's all he give a shit about, right? The ones where Reagan's shaking hands with him and all those, they were all there. He says, "All right, this one is going to go. These 2 are going to go to the Daily Journal." And it was I got the front page of the Daily Journal with Mayor Dunn and Reagan shaking hands. And then I had 7 marginal pictures of his little nephew, or his grandson. It was his grandson shaking hands with Reagan. And all the other pictures he didn't give a shit about. And he says, "I'll get you paid. Sally, cut him a check." He turned to the side and just goes, "Sally, cut him a check. Cut him a check." And that was Ronald Reagan. My day with Ronald Reagan. Now, I want to tell you, before this ends and the battery's about to bust, I want to tell you that I'd spent 2 other days with the mayor, with Muhammad Ali, and you're not going to believe this, and I spent the whole day driving around in a limousine with Mike Tyson. They also came to Elizabeth to tell kids not to take drugs. You remember that campaign, Just Say No? Well, Mike Tyson came to Elizabeth, and so did Muhammad Ali. And for some reason, the mayor called me on those 2 jobs, too.